All right, welcome guys. Live stream should be starting up right now. So today we're going to go over the Showdown slate here with the Clippers and the Suns. Pretty excited for the Showdown slate. I think there's obviously some chalkier plays, a couple of different ways you can get different. I think the most risk obviously is with those Clippers value plays. So we'll get to because we don't really know what that bench rotation is going to look like. It's changed a lot so far in the playoffs, but as far as news goes for the Showdown, Morris was originally not on the injury list, then was a game time decision. Now he's in. Again, we expected that. Now the minutes he didn't play, they got cut short last game. So I would say like of those Clippers wings, he's probably got a little bit more risk involved with like him and Batum. Now again, that should come in at lower ownership for Marcus Morris. So it kind of depends how you're really going about the Showdown slate. As far as the Vegas odds, the 223 over under, and the Suns are 4.5-point favorites. So, what's going on, guys? What's going on, Patrick? Tori, how's it going, guys? What's up, Matt? Yeah, if you have questions for the two gamer, I can go over it. But I'm going to mainly be covering the Showdown slate. But yeah, if you want to like ask me a question about the two gamer, because I am playing the two game slate. So yeah, if you have questions for that, you can ask me that at the end. But yeah, going to go over the Showdown slate. So we'll start it off with the LA Clippers. And I don't have to spend a ton of time here, right? We kind of know Paul George is a clear play, right? He's going to play 40-plus minutes without Kawhi Leonard. Obviously, you can do it all. Now, can you make the argument to fade him in the Showdown? Yeah. If I'm doing that, though, again, I wouldn't recommend it for one lineup. If I am doing a Paul George fade, I'd probably play Reggie Jackson. I'm probably trying to get one of Marcus Morris or Nick Batum in there, right? And I'll try to load up in those secondary Clippers plays if I'm playing Paul George or if I'm fading Paul George. So yeah, unless there's like early foul trouble or like it rolls an ankle or something, I don't see a way that Paul George really lets us down. So obviously like him there at the top. And with the secondary plays here for the Clippers, we have Reggie, Batum, and Marcus Morris. I guess we can go Terrence Mann in that price range too. He feels a little pricey for the Showdown slate, but got to start with Reggie Jackson. He is my favorite of this bunch of like the mid-range guys, even though he's the priciest. And it's because he has the ability to kind of take over a game. We saw it in the regular season, right? When one of Paul George or Kawhi Leonard are out, or even both, like we saw some pretty big games from Reggie. So he's got to be, as I've been repeating myself a lot, he's got to be the number 2 on offense behind Paul George when Kawhi is out. And he's gone for 33, 54, and 39 fantasy points last 3 games, 37, 38, and 39 minutes. He had 10 assists 2 games ago, 4 assists and 6 boards last game. He's doing a better job with the peripheral stats. I'm pretty high on Reggie Jackson here in the mid-range. He is my favorite of the mid-range group. Now with Batum, Morris at 7, 6, and 7K respectively. Mentioned I was a little bit worried about their minutes because it was game 1. Both the minutes went down. Morris, some of it due to the injury, some of it due to, again, they just extended the rotation. Batum played 37 minutes last game. You know, minutes-wise for these guys, what am I expecting? I think 30 to 35 for Batum and Morris. I think is a pretty fair guess. Again, with Morris, I mentioned he probably comes in with a little bit more risk since he's dealing with the knee injury. He's only played 21 minutes, and he was in the locker room for the beginning of the second half, the last game. So I think he becomes a little more risk, whereas Batum maybe a little bit safer. But again, that should probably lower the ownership on Morris. With Terrence Mann, feels a little pricey for the Showdown slate. I think it's still playable, right? He'll play most likely around 25 minutes. If he plays well like he did 2 games ago, he could push for more like he did 36 minutes 2 games ago, obviously. So I think Mann is still playable, but I don't love the price. Now, this is where the Showdown slate's going to be won, right, is getting the Clippers value right, because they ran a 10-man rotation. So Zubac, Pat Bev, Rondo, Cousins, and Kennard all played. Now, we'll start with Zubac at 4-6. So he started the second half actually when Morris was in the locker room. He only played 18 minutes. However, even though he's not like that good in the defensive end, he's still better than Boogie. Like Boogie really gets burned in the defensive end. So, and even though Boogie Cousins played well last game on the offensive end, I think he was like -12 or something, total. So like the Suns scored a lot when Boogie was out there. So I think there's a chance that maybe he gets a DNP at Boogie Cousins as it is. Now with Zubac's minutes, he could play 5, he could play 20, right? He played 18 last game. Again, partly he got a little bit of a boost there with Morris injury. So there is some risk here with Zubac. Now, what I will say is he's normally a pretty decent point per guy. A guy can block some shots, get some rebounds, obviously. So fair value, but don't think he's like a smash play. Pat Beverly, 4-2, feels a little bit pricey for a guy that probably gets 15 to 20 minutes. And more out there for his defense. He did have the one big game 2 games ago. I think he is maybe a little bit safer than Zubac because we know, the minutes probably are going to be there for Pat Bev based on rotations in game 1 and last series, where Zubac minutes can really fluctuate. So, but I do think Zubac probably has a little more upside if things go right there between those two. Rondo's a guy I think is going to be very, very popular here at 2.6K. I still think there's a chance he plays pretty limited minutes, but he played 22 minutes last game after 9 and 7 the previous 2. Like, don't be surprised if you play Rondo and he plays 5 minutes. I think that's still a possibility. However, he's like way cheaper than Pat Bev and Zubac, who we just went over. So I'm more willing to take a risk on Rondo. Plus, he's a guy that if the minutes are there, he's most likely going to come through for you, right? He's a guy that can stuff the stat sheet. So I do like Rondo here for value. Now, I think you can make the argument to fade him in larger field tournaments because I think he's going to be very, very popular because there's not a lot of great plays kind of in that range. And then let's talk about Boogie. So he's at 2K. Another one I think will get some ownership. I'm a little bit worried he gets a DNP here. He played well in the offensive end. He went for 19 feints points in 13 minutes. He got burned on the defensive end. And that always is kind of the case now with Boogie. Obviously, with those injuries, he's just not the same player. Another one, I think there's a little bit more risk with Boogie as opposed to Rondo. Both guys, let's just say this. If I knew both Rondo and Cousins were going to play 15 minutes, I would play them both. I think there's a little more risk with Cousins. It's just a matter of your risk tolerance. If you do play him, you got to know that there is a chance he gets a DNP. However, if you fade him and you see Boogie Cousins getting ready to check in, you're going to be like, oh, crap. Like, because he's probably going to, if he plays, he'll probably be needed in the in your Showdown lineup because, again, he's that good of a point per minute guy. And then Luke Kennard, he was the last guy that actually played a couple minutes, 9 and 8 minutes, so they've been trending down. However, I would still not be super shocked if he plays like 20 minutes. We saw 20 minutes a couple of times already in that Utah series, right? If he shoots well, you never know. So there's 10 guys that played last game for the Clippers. I'm not sure 10 guys play again here. And with the bench, that's just where the most risk is. So let's move on to the Suns. I guess real quick, if you guys are just coming in, if you could, hit that like button. It helps me out a lot. We're at 154 viewers for the Showdown slate, 31 likes. Try to get to maybe, say, 50 or 60 likes before the end, and then I'll leave some time for some questions. So the Suns, I think, are a little bit easier to break down. Booker, same thing I'll say about Paul George. Great play at the top. I think optimal build-wise is definitely going to have both of them in there. Again, can you make the argument to fade Booker? I guess if you do that, though, you just load up on the secondary guys for the Clippers then, or for the Suns, I mean. Yeah, I think Booker is great. DeAndre Ayton's pretty safe at 9-2. We know he's going to play about 35 minutes. And he played well. He shot 10-14, went for 20 and 9. I think he's safe. Again, even if Zubac or Cousins are out there, he should be able to have his way. So, I think Ayton's a perfectly fine play. Bridges and Crowder are both safe options, too, at 7.2 and 7.8K respectively. We know these guys are both going to play over 30 minutes as long as there's no foul trouble. And normally these guys are pretty consistent. They can have some upside if they knock down some threes. So Bridges and Crowder, again, perfectly fine plays. Campaign's a guy I'm really high in at 6'2". I think he's going to be popular again, but it's for good reason. The price didn't come up enough. He played 29 minutes, was also in foul trouble last game. He is a good point per minute guy, good offensive player, and I think we get 35-ish minutes if he stays out of foul trouble. So I'm really high in Campaign once again there at that price. And then the bench guys for this Suns. So Cam Johnson, on the Showdowns or on the 2-game slate, I think he's a little bit more viable because he's like 3.9. On the Showdown slate of 5.4, that feels a little pricey. Did play 24 minutes last game. I think he played a little bit extra because campaign foul trouble. I think normally we get in the 15 to 20 minute range for Cam Johnson. Now he's a decent offensive player. Obviously he's going to have to knock down some corner threes to get you there. So on the Showdown slate, I think he's a little bit overpriced, still playable though. Torrey Craig at 3.4. We kind of know what Torrey Craig's role is. 10 to 15 minutes on the bench. He's actually been a pretty decent point per guy, surprisingly, in these playoffs. So I think he's a perfectly fine play because of the price point. And then Dario Saric at 2.4 is for sure in play here. Again, I think around 10 minutes he'll play the backup 5. And now if Ayton gets in some foul trouble, that's where we could see Saric play a little bit more. Right? He played 16 that one game where Ayton got in some early foul trouble. So at 2.4K, at close to the minimum, he is for sure in play here. Obviously, a little bit risky. He's not going to play a ton. And then finally, Etuan Moore did crack the rotation. He played 11 minutes. Not a great point for a guy that's super reliant in the scoring, but he's also basically 1K, 1.2K, right? So sure, again, you can make the argument for basically anyone that played last game. Now, could they add some of the rotation here and maybe remove Etuan Moore? It's possible, right? They could add a Galloway, could add a Javon Carter. I'm not going to mess with that, right? For my one lineup, I think that's getting a little bit too contrarian. I would rather roll the dice on those Clippers value than try to play, one of those Suns backup guards that maybe plays 10 minutes. So that's kind of right now, guys, for the Showdown slate. Let's see. I'm guessing we don't really have any big news to go over for this one. Marcus Morris will play. And yeah, for like optimal build-wise, obviously, Paul George or Devin Booker in the captain is probably the way to go. I think if, cheaper options in the captain or kind of got more guys in the mid-range, I think Reggie is a guy that has some upside, obviously, and I think Campaign feels a little bit too cheap. With the value guys, sure, you can roll the dice on one of those Clippers, value guys, and then go team jam them in. That's obviously a lot riskier, though, and I wouldn't recommend that if you're playing a ton. So let's get some questions, guys. Leave them in the chat here. And, got about just under 10 minutes until we get out of here, so make sure to put some questions in there. Zubac starting. Wow, okay. That we must have literally just got that because I did not see it. Yeah, wow. So, Man is moving to the bench. Zubac is starting. Okay, that changes things. Oh, Pat. Am I reading that correct? Pat Beverly and Zubac starting? What in the world? Why? All right, so, So first, let's go over Man and Batum, who are no longer starting. They are definitely overpriced now. Definitely overpriced. So, you have Man at 6'4", Batum at 7'6". I have a hard time getting to either of them with them coming out the bench. So, I don't think I can get to either of them. Now, with Zubac starting, I feel pretty good about him now for value. I think we get at least 15 minutes, probably closer to 20. And I think there's upside for maybe him to play a couple more minutes against DeAndre Ayton. So I think Zubac is a very, very safe play. But now, what this does, with Zubac starting, I think there's a better chance that Boogie plays now that Zubac is starting. I still don't think it's a guarantee, but I think it's a better chance that Boogie is going to get some minutes if Zubac is starting. So there's still some DNP risk for Boogie. Obviously, Zubac is the much safer play, but yeah, both centers are in play. Feel much better about Zubac, but I do think there's now a better chance that Boogie is playing now that Zubac is starting. And with Pat Beverly starting, I did not expect that at all. I'm not sure why. I guess for his defense to throw him out there to try to harass Devin Booker. 4-2 starting. I still don't think we've seen this story before from Pat Beverly, and even, late in the regular season, early, he would start and play 15 to 20 minutes. So I don't know if he plays a ton more. Maybe he could push this for 20 plus minutes. I do think he is a safer play now that he's starting. However, I would still prioritize Zubac over Pat Bev if I'm going to go to one of those newly inserted starters. So Pat Bev for sure in play, but I think I feel a little bit better about Zubac starting. Wow, that I honestly did not expect that. Did not expect Man and Batum to go to the bench. Payne, Booker, Bridges, Crowder, Ayton. That's what we expected for the Suns. But yeah, that does surprise me for the Clippers. All right, now let's get some questions. Zubac, yeah, I think Zubac looks pretty good. And again, what I think that does, I think there's a better chance now that Boogie plays. Not playing with the starters is good for Man. He gets all the shots. Yes and no. I mean, it's just at a price point at 6.4K where if he was 4K, I'm good with that. It kind of comes down to the price, right? So yeah, I get what you're saying in the fact that he'll have a little more usage coming out the bench, but Paul George is going to play basically the entire game, right? He'll sit for a little bit. Getting weird and playing both centers. Okay, I don't hate it. Again, if I knew Boogie was going to play, I think that's actually viable on the two gamer, right? They're both close to min price. I'm playing Zubac on the 2-gamer. So I think that's perfectly fine. Pat Bev or Rondo? Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'll still rather have Rondo for the discount than Pat Beverly. If you can afford Pat Bev, he might be a little bit safer because he's starting. But I still like the price a little bit better on a guy like on Rondo. Yeah. Bridges, Morris, or Man last spot. I think for me it's Bridges. The reason I say that is Man is no longer starting. Marcus Morris is dealing with that knee injury. I think Mikal Bridges is the safest of the bunch. Rondo or Boogie. So I still feel better about Rondo's minutes just because Boogie really got burned in the defensive end. However, if both play the same minutes, I would obviously rather have Boogie because he's the better point per minute guy. I just think there's more opportunity for Rondo to play more. Reggie will take a hit not being the point guard. He's still going to be. No, I'm not worried. Like Pat Bev's not going to have the ball in his hands a ton, even though he's listed as the point guard. Payne or DeAndre Ayton. So point per dollar, it's definitely Payne for me. Straight up, it's going to be Ayton, but Payne looks much better point per dollar. Playing both centers in the 2-gamer allows Paul George, Booker, Middleton, and others. Yeah, it opens up a lot. Like it's obviously risky, but I'm fine with that. Yeah, exactly. He's not really a true point guard. Rondo or Craig? I think I'd rather roll the dice on Rondo, but it's pretty close. Payne captain spot to get different. Yeah, I think that's definitely something I'm considering too. Because I think Payne is still very underpriced for a guy that should play 30 to 35 minutes. So I think that's definitely doable. Morris or Batum? Yeah, it's pretty close now, right? If Batum was starting, I would have said Batum, but now Batum coming to the bench. However, we got Morris dealing with the knee. Maybe a small lean to Morris since he's a little bit cheaper in starting. Pat Bev and Trey or Rondo and Paul George. That's a tough one. I think I'll lean the second one, though. Should I switch out Cam Johnson for Zubac? I think I personally would. That is close, but yeah, I think Zubac looks a little bit better now than Cam Johnson in the Showdown. Man or Cameron Johnson? Man still. Yeah, even though Man's coming to the bench, I'd rather have Man than Cam Johnson. DK, what do you think of Torrey Craig? I think he's a fine value on the slate. Should play 10 to 15 minutes. He's actually been a pretty good point per minute guy, too, for the Suns off the bench. And he's, 3.4, right? Where's Torrey Craig? Yeah, he's 3.4. I think he's definitely playable here. Captain Paul George and Marcus Morris, or Captain Reggie and Paul George? So the first one is definitely more optimal, but I think that second one, I kind of like that second one. I think Captain Reggie and Captain Payne are two other captains I think can make your lineup different in the larger field stuff. I think that they both have upside. Paul George or Booker on FanDuel. So what are the price points on FanDuel? I haven't looked. Good luck, DK and others. Going to go make some. Oh, yeah, good luck, man. So, Tori with the $10 super chat. Thank you, obviously. And let's see what we got. All right, 2 lineups for Showdown and 2 gamers. Showdown is Payne captain, Booker, Reggie, Paul George, Zubac, Craig, and 2 game. Okay, I think that looks pretty decent. I think, just having Payne in the captain will make your lineup different. Obviously, other people are going to have it, but I think in the larger field stuff, that they'll definitely differentiate yourself. And 2 gamer, you got Payne, Booker, Bridges, Giannis, Zubac, Bogdan, Connaughton, and Drew. I think that looks pretty decent too. I think Drew. I would prefer Middleton to Drew straight up, obviously. But they're like $600 different on the 2 gamer. Connaughton, I think, is the safest buck value because he's been playing some decent minutes. So and Bogdan's gonna make your lineup different. It is a little bit contrarian with that Bogdan Drew combo, but everything else looks pretty solid to me. Yeah, Morris or Bridges. I think it's just a small lean to Bridges. Captain Payne with Ayton, Booker, Paul George, Rondo, and Zoo. I think that looks pretty good. Payne, Booker, Craig, Giannis, Zubac, Rondo, Patsy, and Paul George thoughts. Looks pretty similar to my build. I'm kind of going that stars and scrubs for the 2 gamer too. So yeah, I think it looks pretty solid. Ayton or Reggie. So I think Ayton's probably a little bit safer. That one's basically a toss-up though. Like, I'm fine if you want to go Reggie and leave a little bit of salary on the table. I like both. Paul George, Reggie, Ayton, Zubac, Bridges. Looks good. What's lower owned? Reggie and Craig, or Ayton and Rondo? I would say probably the Reggie and Torrey Craig one. I think Rondo is going to be a pretty popular value play. So the lower owned is going to be the Reggie Craig one. However, I think I prefer the Ayton Rondo combo. way up in Milton. Yeah, Paul George is 15K, Booker's 14.5K. Yeah, probably small lean to Booker since he's cheaper. Man or Pat Beverly? So if you had the salary for Man, I would rather have Man. I think point per dollar though, Pat Bev. Biden does worry me a little bit. Yeah, he's been bad shooting plus the knee, and he's not been playing big minutes. So that is a pretty big risk. I'll say it. That is a pretty big risk. Cam Johnson or Zubac? It's Zubac for me now. They starting. Is Sarge worthy of a punt low on option? Of course, because he's actually a decent point per minute guy. And if Ayton gets an early foul trouble, you can definitely see some more minutes for Sarge. So winding down here, guys. Another minute. Yep, got to go stream for Patreon. Collins and Portis or Bridges and Morris. I mean, so the Bobby Portis one is tough, right? Because is he going to play? I would lean towards yes since it's game one, but you just don't know. So the Bridges Morris one is just much, much safer. Is Cousins still a good play? He's a risky play. Even though Zubac is starting, I said I think there's a better chance he plays. However, I still wouldn't be shocked if he gets a DNP because, again, he got burned in the defensive end. So if you play him, you got to be willing to accept a 0. Or what do y'all think about Reggie, Craig? Okay. All right, guys, so that's basically going to do it for me. Appreciate all you guys coming to check out the shorter live stream. Thank you, Tori, again for the super chat. That was very, very nice of you. And I'll be back tonight to break down the Showdown slate tomorrow. I might have a video up, too, to break down a 2-gamer if you guys are interested in something like that. So, yeah, thanks again, guys. Enjoy this game, and I'll see you back here tomorrow to break down Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals.